Good afternoon and welcome to the 19th episode of Ahargana. I am back on the banks of the Kaveri. This time I am about 70 kilometers to the east or downstream of Talak Kaveri, that is the source of the Kaveri. I am in Coorg, I am in a place called Dubare, and as you can see the Kaveri, the flow here is extremely, it looks and it feels different from anywhere else because the banks of the river are not clearly defined. The forests, the vegetation on both sides of the river are coming down to the river and into the river. You can even see trees in the middle of the river. The forest and the river seem to belong to each other, seem to blend with each other in this part of Kodagu. It's a beautiful day, it's monsoon day, it was raining and shining all through the day. Now the rains have pretty much stopped, it's kind of shining now. A gentle wind blowing and I can hear the sound of the Kaveri and of the wind too, just at this moment in time. Absolutely beautiful place to be in. If you remember, I did not say this about Mahabalipuram where I was, Mamallapuram where I was in the previous episode, because this is different. The entire feel of the Kaveri river basin is significantly different from that of a beach and the seashore, and I probably am a mountain and a forest person. I'm not a beach person. But as always, it's not the topic of Ahargana to talk about nature on this scale, though we do talk about nature on a much grander scale, on the scale of the sun and the moon and the astronomy behind the Hindu calendar. Now this is an episode which I almost did not make because we were discussing Ritus in the previous episodes and I covered two definitions of Ritu, and both were Sauramana definitions. One was the Sayana and the other was the Nirayana definition, and I thought I was done with that until I saw a comment from one of our viewers on the Ahargana channel which said, what about the moon based definition of seasons? So that started me thinking, because the moon based definition of seasons is simply not present in Surya Siddhanta, nor did I find it in the works of Shri Bal Gangadhar Tilak, which I have been using as a reference for most of the Sayana episodes. But what I realized was that the moon based definition of Ritu is extremely popular, and it is there in almost all the Panchangas which you could consult, which means this is a traditional and what is known as a Vedic definition of Ritu. So I realized that if I do not cover the moon based definition, the chandramana definition of Ritu, then there will be a hole in the series, there will be a hole in your understanding of Ritus, because you will be listening to something in Ahargana, you will be seeing something in the Panchangas, and you will not be able to make sense of them. They will not correlate. So which is why I decided to make this episode on a chandramana definition of Ritu. That's right, it is based on the moon. It is specifically based on chandra masas. And the definition is very simple. It simply says that Chandramana Yugadhi, which is the beginning of Chaitra masa, is also the beginning of vasanta Ritu. And Chaitra and Vaishaka, the two masas, make up vasanta Ritu. They constitute vasanta Ritu. Jyeshta and Ashada constitute grishma Ritu. Sharavana and Bhadrapada constitute varsha Ritu, and so on and so on. Two chandramasas are assigned to one Ritu each. So 6 chandramasas, 6 Ritus completed there. That is the chandramana definition. But if you think about it, you will realize that this definition is highly problematic. What does that mean? That means, first of all, it is not the moon which creates the varying seasons. It is the sun. It is uttarayana and dakshinayana which create the varying seasons between winter, summer and all the other seasons, not the moon. The moon may affect the tides of the oceans, but not the seasons. So if you define Ritu based on moon, on chandramasas, what is the impact? The impact is that you will find that they do not correlate with what you see on the surface of the earth, or in other words, they do not correlate with ground realities, and that is the problem. So what do I mean by saying it does not correlate with the ground realities? I'll give you two examples. The first example is, as per this definition, the entire month of May is declared to be vasanta Ritu. Imagine, now vasanta Ritu is a very pleasant season, is a very romantic season. The winter is over, the days are warming up, but summer has not yet arrived. But May, May is blistering hot all over India. Unless you live in Kashmir or in a hill station, May is the hottest month for anywhere in India. It cannot be vasanta Ritu. The second example I will give you is month of July. The month of July, according to this definition, the moon based definition, is grishma Ritu, that is summer. It's supposed to be very, very hot. But you know that the month of July is monsoon in India. The Met department will tell you the same thing. June, July, August are monsoon, and July is right there in the middle of the monsoon. Maximum rainfall falls in July. Whereas this definition tells you that that's grishma Ritu. In fact, I am recording this video in July, and it's absolutely beautiful here in the plains on the banks of the Kaveri. If I come here in May, it will be a different story altogether. It will be blistering hot here, because this is not at an elevation. I am in Coorg. I have jungles all around me, but I'm not in the mountains. I'm not on a hill station. So these are the two examples which I give you to show that this moon based definition is problematic. So if this definition is problematic, why are we using it? In fact, it is very, very, very widely used everywhere. The reason why it's widely used is that this is considered to be the traditional definition. This is a Vedic definition. This is a very old definition which has come down to us. So we continue with it. But the source of this definition is not clear to me. It's not there in Surya Siddhanta. And I don't think any of the later Siddhantas would define this, because astronomers like Aryabhatta and the others knew better. So if this is an ancient tradition, then you know my line of thinking. This definition must have been true a very, very, very long time in the past, but due to the precession of the equinox, it's no longer true today. So I will do an analysis of that line of thinking, but that's for the next episode. In this episode, I will just illustrate to you using Stellarium this lunar definition, this moon based chandramana definition of Ritu, and I will also show you some data to show exactly these problems which I mentioned right now. So I'm going to roll the animation. Take a look. Okay, let's get started. In the last two episodes, we have seen two different ways of defining Ritu. The first one was a Sayana definition, which is splitting uttarayana into three Ritus and dakshinayana into three more Ritus. The second definition was a Nirayana definition, which took the Nirayana Rashi Mandala and assigned two Rashis to one Ritu. In this episode, we will take a look at a third way of defining Ritu. And this definition is based on the movement of the moon and not the sun. So this is a chandramana definition. The definition is as follows. It says that the chandramana Yugadhi, which starts Chaitra masa, is also the beginning of vasanta Ritu. And Chaitra and Vaishaka masas constitute vasanta Ritu. Jyeshta and Ashada masas constitute grishma Ritu. Sharavana and Bhadrapada masa constitute varsha Ritu, and so on and so on. So let's take a look at this definition and analyze it. Now here in the animation, this is very familiar to you. Here is the ecliptic. This is Meshadi, which is fixed, the beginning of the Narayana zodiac. And these are the two Vishwats and the two ayanas, uttarayana and dakshinayana points. Now I am going to draw first the sayana definition onto this. So vasanta begins here, grishma begins here, varsha begins here, sharad begins here, hemanta begins here, and shishira begins here. We have seen this. Whenever the sun comes to this point and from here to here, when the sun is in this segment, it is shishira ritu. When the sun is in this segment, it is vasanta ritu, and so on. Now, I'm going to go back to an old video that we saw almost a year back, the video defining chandramasa, or rather chandravarsha. And I'm going to take that and superimpose it on this as follows. So the year is 2021. I am at April 12th, and this is Phalguna Amavasya. So that is the end of Phalguna Masa, Krishna Paksha. That is the end of Phalguna Masa in the Hemanta tradition. And as per the new definition, the chandramana definition, this is the end of shishira ritu. So this is the beginning of vasanta ritu. But take a look here. You will already see that the sayana definition says vasanta ritu is going to end very soon. Right now the sun is here. When the sun comes here, grishma ritu will begin. Whereas this new definition, the moon-based definition says vasanta ritu begins here. So let's see the implication of this. I'm going to run the animation, see what happens. And remember, the date is April 12th already. So I'm going to run the animation. Now Chaitra Masa Shukla Paksha is in progress. Now this is Chaitra Purnima. So Chaitra Masa Shukla Paksha is ending, and this is Vasanta Ritu. And the date is April 27th. There is a reason why I am pointing at the date. I will explain that in a moment. I continue further. Chaitra Masa Krishna Paksha, it is still Vasanta Ritu. And this is Chaitra Amavasya. Chaitra Masa is ending here. It is still Vasanta Ritu, but look at the date. It's May 12th. Now think about it. Imagine that this is May 12th. Anywhere in India, wherever you may live, what is the temperature in the place where you live on May 12th? Unless you live in Kashmir or you live at an altitude on a hill station, the middle of May is going to be blistering hot. But according to this new definition, the moon-based definition, the chandramana definition of Ritu, this is Vasanta Ritu. This is problematic, as you can clearly see. I will illustrate this further by showing you some data of the temperatures all over India in the month of May. Take a look at that. Now, here is a map of India, and it shows the average maximum temperature in May in various cities all over India. And the color of the dots, the darker the brown color, the closer the temperature is to 45 degrees centigrade. So for example, if I go to New Delhi, the average maximum temperature in May is 40.5 degrees centigrade. Maximum temperature meaning sometime around noon every day. That's when it's hottest in the daytime. And averaged over the 31 days of May and over a long period of time from 1956 to the year 2000. I got this data from the Met Department, and the average for May in New Delhi is 40.5 degrees centigrade in the month of May. That's how hot it is. You look at Kolkata, it's 35.5 degrees centigrade. You look at Chennai, it's 37.4 degrees centigrade. All of them extremely hot. You come to Bombay, it's slightly cooler, relatively 33.3 degrees centigrade, but even that think about it, is 33.3 degrees centigrade. It is still hot. The only places which are not so hot is definitely Srinagar at 24.2 degrees centigrade. That is very pleasant. So that you can say is Vasanta Ritu. But how can I say that New Delhi is Vasanta Ritu when it's 40.5 degrees centigrade? Or definitely, for example, Joshimath, Nainital, these are all cool and pleasant. So these can be Vasanta Ritu, but these are hill stations. Even in southern India, if you see here, this is Ooty, 22 degrees centigrade. This is Kodaikanal, 20.9 degrees centigrade. They are pleasant because they are at altitude, not because it's a Vasanta Ritu. Everywhere else in the plains, it's blistering hot. So clearly, this is a problem. The Chandramana based definition of Ritu is not correlating with what we feel on the surface of the earth when we live in India. But this definition is extremely popular. This definition is used in many panchangas. I am not sure where the origin of this definition is because Surya Siddhanta does not use this definition. It's coming from somewhere else, but this is an extremely popular definition which is used by many panchangas. In fact, this is the traditional Hindu definition of Ritu. Chaitra and Vaishaka are Vasanta Ritu. And Chandramana Yugadhi is the beginning of Vasanta. And Jyeshta and Ashada is grishma Ritu. And when Sharavana masa starts, the rains set in. It's there in many poetic works also, this description of the seasons and these months, correlating these. This is a very traditional definition, but it is anachronistic because it does not apply with the lived reality. It does not correlate with the lived reality in India. I will now switch back to the Stellarium animation so we can continue with where we left off. Let's now continue further with our animation. Now Vaishaka Masa, Shukla Paksha, it is still Vasanta Ritu. But now the date is May 26th. So that means the entire month of May, not just the first half, the entire month of May is declared to be Vasanta Ritu as per this Chandramana definition of Ritu. And that just does not correlate with what we feel on the ground. So let's continue further. Vaishaka Masa, Krishna Paksha. Now Vaishaka Masa ends, and as per this new definition, Vasanta Ritu also ends here and Grishma Ritu begins. But what is the date now? We are in June 10th. Now, if you see the information coming from the Met Department, the first week of June is when the monsoon sets in India. But according to this definition, this is Vasanta Ritu. Whereas according to the Sayana definition, we are pretty close to the beginning of Varsha Ritu. So let's continue with this and see what happens. So this is supposed to be summer, Grishma Ritu, Jyeshta Masa, Shukla Paksha, June 25th. And proceeding further, Jyeshta Masa, Krishna Paksha, Grishma Ritu. We are now in July 10th and it is still Grishma Ritu. And July, you know fully well, all over India, it's raining cats and dogs. This is the monsoon time. Yes, there may be once in a way when there is a poor monsoon or a bad monsoon, but by and large, July is peak monsoon in India. And once again, I will show you data from the Met Department to show you what it looks like in the month of July. So here is the data from the Met Department. This is average monthly rainfall in millimeters in various states of India for every month, Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, up to December. And this data has been averaged over more than a century. From 1901 to 2017, the Met Department has data. And they are saying, and if you look at the color coding, the dark blues or a dark green, as the case may be, is getting to close to 1,500 millimeters of rain. and the light blue, almost bordering on white, is 0. So if you see the month of July, it's raining everywhere. In fact, in Karnataka, it's fantastic rainfall on an average over the last 100 years, 117 years. This month is completely raining, except for maybe Tamil Nadu, where there is hardly any rain in the month of July. Everywhere else, there is significant amount of rainfall, whereas our new definition says this is grishma ritu, this is summer, not yet varsha ritu. So once again, the problem continues that when it is raining everywhere, and here you can see in Gujarat, it's 876 millimeters, and here you see in Konkan and Goa, it's 1075 millimeters. And in sub-Himalayan, West Bengal and Sikkim, 644 millimeters as opposed to 14, 23, 44 in the time, in the months when it doesn't rain at all. So this is really the rainy month, and our new definition calls this grishma ritu. So once again, this does not correlate, this new definition, the chandramana based definition, does not correlate with the ground reality. So let me go back to the animation and let us continue with the animation. And Ashada masa, it is still grishma ritu. Now we are moving into July 24th. We are coming to the end of July. So the entire July is declared as grishma ritu, when it's really raining everywhere. And proceeding further, we come to the end of Ashada masa, and this is when grishma ritu also ends. After this definition will say varsha ritu starts, and that's okay, because we will be in August, September, when it is still raining in India, because our monsoons really stretch from June, July, August, and into September also in some places. But as far as vasanta and grishma are concerned, the definition, the chandramana based definition, and what we feel on the surface of the earth are not correlating. Now, this is not surprising, because you know that seasons are defined by the movement of the sun. The moon has nothing to do with the seasons. The moon affects ocean tides, for instance, high tide, low tide, etc. But the moon definitely has nothing to do with causing the seasons. Seasons are caused by the movement of the sun, uttarayana and dakshinayana, and this is very well known. So that's why it's not surprising if a definition of Ritu using the moon are not really correlating with ground reality. Now I need to make a couple of other observations, additional problems actually. One of them is an additional problem. First, I will point out that I use the year 2021 for illustrating this particular episode, because that is the worst case scenario. If you remember the beginning of episode, I showed you that Chandramana Yugadhi happened when the moon and sun were somewhere here. So Vasanta Ritu was starting as per the Chandramana definition, but as per the Sayana definition, Grishma is starting here, very close. So these two definitions were terribly off. One says Vasanta is starting, the other says Grishma is starting. So that is what I mean by worst case scenario. But you know that if I go into 2022, Phalguna Amavasya will fall back. And I go into 2023, that is this year, Phalguna Amavasya will fall further back, somewhere here, let's say. In that case, in 2023, according to the Chandramana definition, Vasanta Ritu will start somewhere here. And according to the Sayana definition, this is the middle of Vasanta Ritu. So that's not too bad. They will still agree that during this period it is Vasanta Ritu. But I picked 2021 precisely because I wanted to illustrate the worst case scenario and show you the entire May and the entire July are labeled wrongly in the Chandramana definition of Ritu. Second and related point, and this is a problem, is that when Phalguna Amavasya falls back, then it leaps forward because an adhika masa is added. But in that Chandra Varsha, there will be 13 Chandramasas, not 12, but only 6 Ritus still. So one of the Ritus is going to get one extra Chandramasa. just like that, for no reason at all. I mean, no reason related to the seasons. The adhika masa is added for synchronization purposes, but that adhika masa has to be parked in some ritu. So, for example, in 2023, there is adhika Sharavana masa, then nija Sharavana masa, then Bhadrapada masa. All these three will be declared as varsha ritu. So, this year 2023, varsha ritu has 3 chandramasas. And if you go back to 2020, there was a adhika Ashwina masa. That means sharad ritu was declared as having 3 masas. Not that really varsha extended or sharad extended. It's just that there is adhika masa and that's where it falls. So we extend that ritu by an extra masa. Not very meaningful, not very logical. It seems very arbitrary. But that is what happens when you use the moon, which has nothing to do with the seasons, and go ahead and define seasons using the moon. Now, why did this definition come about at all? If it doesn't really make sense, why is this definition there? Why was it created? By now, you should know my line of thinking. I am going to argue that this definition was created a long time back, and at that time, this definition actually held good. It made sense. It correlated with ground realities. But due to the precession of the equinox, things changed, and today this definition no longer makes sense. So I will illustrate to you in the next episode, or maybe a tutorial, using a Stellarium animation, at what point in time in the past this moon-based definition also made sense. But not in this episode. I'm going to close this episode at this point in time. I know it's been a rather long episode once again, and for the first time I brought in something other than Stellarium. I showed you some data from the Met department because I had to substantiate that the astronomy doesn't correlate with the ground realities in terms of what is felt in the seasons on the ground. So once again, I thank you for your patience. I will close this episode now. Thank you very much for watching. So that was all about the moon-based chandramana definition of Ritu and why it does not correlate with ground realities. So these are the 3 definitions of Ritus, 2 in Sauramana, Sayana and Nirayana, the 3rd one in Chandramana. And as I pointed out, the Chandramana definition does not correlate with ground realities, but then why are we following it? Because we believe it is an old Vedic definition which has come down to us from time immemorial. And I agree with that, because once again, and I have done this before in Ahargana, it is my belief that a long time back in the distant past, this definition held good, it made sense. Subsequently, due to the precession of the equinox, this definition does not make sense any longer today. So I will dedicate one episode or maybe a tutorial to analyzing and showing to you at what point in the distant past this definition actually made sense. And you will find that also comes down very close to 2000 BC. That's similar to the time the Taittiriya Samhita and the Taittiriya Brahmana were composed. The technique is familiar to you, but I will illustrate that to you once again. But it's not just the Chandramana definition which contradicts ground realities. Even the Sauramana Sayana definition, which is the best definition, still is problematic for somebody like me who lives in Karnataka, or for people who live in Tamil Nadu or Andhra Pradesh or Kerala. And the problem arises not because the astronomical definition is wrong, the definition is perfectly fine. The problem is with the geography of our country. From Kanyakumari to Kashmir, you go from 8 degrees north of equator to 35 degrees, 37 degrees north of equator, and that's a huge spread and a one size fits all definition in latitude. That is problematic. So, I will illustrate to you in another episode as to what problems this single definition, the best Sayana definition, causes because of the huge geographic spread of our country. And once I do that, we will be done with Ritus and we can move on to the final segments of Ahargana, which is to do with more the smaller time frames of Dina, Ratri, Ahoratra, Galige, Nalige, etc. So, as always, thank you very much for watching this episode. Thank you very much for staying with this serial all along. And as always, again I request you, please forward the link of this channel, of the Ahargana channel, to all your contacts, because the content has been built up. This is pretty much all the knowledge I have about this topic, and it's out there in these videos, and a few more to be added going forward. But the majority of the content, the astronomy behind the Hindu calendar, is already there in these videos. So, thank you for your support once again. Thank you with all my heart for having stayed with this serial for all this time period. Thank you very much for watching. I close this episode here. Take care and bye bye.